Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
All right, I am just going to get us started since it is an hour training. I want Whitney to have as much time to get her presentation in. Thank you all so much for being here today. Today, Whitney is going to be presenting a training called Cultural Humility, Addressing the Goldilocks Syndrome. My name is Natalie Queen, and I am a therapist here at Heart & Solutions. I am so happy to be hosting this training with You Need a Training today. Before we begin this morning, I'd like to take a minute to just review a few housekeeping items. As a quick reminder, everyone attending the training must be individually registered. If you're joining with a friend and you haven't registered yet, you won't be able to access the CE certificate or get credit for attending today. If you have registered individually but are joining together, you will need to open the Google Meet link individually in order to get credit for attending and to get that CE quiz completed. For those that have attended a training with us before, you will see that we're on a new platform. If you have any questions about how to access things, please let us know. All materials for today's training can be found in your course page by clicking on that paperclip in the top right corner. After the training ends today, you'll be able to access that quiz. The quiz will not be available until the training concludes. So don't worry if you're unable to click on it right now. After you complete the quiz, the CE certificate will just be automatically generated for you. With that being said, like I said earlier, today's training is being presented by Dr. Witni Jackson. She is a seasoned social work professional with over 15 years of experience in mental health, crisis intervention, and program management. She holds a doctorate in social work from Capella University, a master in social work from Georgia State University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Spelman College. Dr. Jackson's expertise spans various sectors, including veteran services, mental health care, and community outreach. Currently working as an outpatient mental health clinician, Dr. Jackson serves as subject matter expert, offering education and consultation to both internal and external stakeholders. In addition, Dr. Jackson is the CEO and instructor at Kuna Consulting, LLC, where she designs and delivers accredited educational programs for social workers, professional counselors, and addiction therapists across Georgia. She also provides clinical supervision and consultation as requested. We are so excited, Whitney, to have you for this training. So I'm going to just let you take over from here.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this training on cultural humility. Today, we'll be exploring a concept known as the Goldilocks syndrome and how it relates to our practice. This idea comes from the well-known fairy tale of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where Goldilocks seeks the just right experience, whether it's the porridge, the chair, or the bed. Similarly, in our professions, we often encounter clients from diverse backgrounds and must find the just right approach to effectively meet their unique needs. Hopefully, by the time I'm finished presenting, you will have a deeper understanding of how to navigate cultural differences with humility, ensuring that your approach is just right for each unique client. So let's dive in and start this important journey of learning and self-reflection. And again, this is an interactive training, so if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type it into the chat. By the end of this training, you all should be able to, 1, define cultural humility and its importance. 2, explain the Goldilocks syndrome and its relevance to cultural humility. 3, recognize the impact of colonialism and how to decentralize the colonizer's perspective. 4, identify practical steps for integrating cultural humility into practice. And 5, develop strategies to ensure culturally responsive and ethically grounded work. So as we move into this part of the training, I just want us to ground things in how we can hold the space together. These are the community agreements I usually use. I want everyone to feel like this is a safe space to learn and grow. So just a quick review of these, and if anyone has any other community agreements that would help them to feel safe, please let me know. So we speak from the I, from our own experience and reflections, rather than making assumptions about others. 2, discomfort is not a sign of failure here. It's often the signal that learning is happening. We hold that intent does not erase impact. We can mean well and still cause harm, and both can be true at the same time. So when that tension shows up, we stay curious rather than defensive. Let's get down to 5. We honor confidentiality, not by sharing other stories, excuse me, outside of the space. 6, we practice step-by-step back, making room for multiple voices, especially those that are often quiet or marginalized. 7, we acknowledge power dynamics in the room, including professional roles, identities, and lived experiences, and how those shape who feels safe to speak. 8, this is a brave space, not a comfortable one. We may not reach closure today, and that is okay. Some learning continues after we leave the room. 9, we commit to empathy. Actually, this is 10. We commit to empathy and compassion for others and for ourselves, and we end with a commitment to action, even if that action is small, unfinished, or still forming. And if anyone has any other community agreements that would help them feel safe, please let me know and let the whole group know so that we can all work together. All right, so we have an icebreaker: too much, too little, or just right. So I'm going to read a few helping scenarios. Don't overthink it, just respond with your gut. If you think it's too much, you can use either you can type into the chat, or you can put your fingers up so I can see some of you. Too much is 1, too little is 2, and just right is 3. So a therapist challenges a client's belief immediately. Is that too much, too little, or just right? I see some 1s. I wonder if I can open this. Wait, I think I see a 2. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, scenario 2, a social worker avoids discussing culture because they fear saying the wrong thing. Is that too much, too little, or just right? I see some 2s. Okay. And then a supervisor gives direct corrective feedback. Is that too much, too little, or just right? Natalie, I think that's 3 fingers you're holding. All right, the last scenario, we have a clinician lets the client fully guide the session with no structure. Is that too much, too little, or just right? Okay, I see some 2s. I think I might see a 3. I'm not sure. Ms. Colleen, can you? I think I saw 3 fingers. Okay, you're not sure. Okay, so I noticed. Did we all agree? No. Why not? This is the Goldilocks problem. What feels just right to us is shaped by our training, our culture, our identity, and our power, not neutrality. So this is why cultural humility matters. And today, we're going to explore how to notice imbalance, understand context, and choose intentional action. All right, so before we move forward, I like to give you all some background on the theoretical framework. So, cultural humility model number 1. This is Turvallon and Murray, 1998, the foundational framework. Cultural humility emphasizes that it's a destination. This is a lifelong process. You're not going to just study a culture and know everything about it. So Tervalon and Murray Garcia introduced this model in 98 as a shift away from the idea of achieving cultural competence. Instead, it emphasizes three key commitments, which are lifelong learning and critical self-reflection, addressing the power imbalances and institutional accountability, and then recognizing and challenging those power imbalances. For us clinicians, cultural humility means acknowledging that we will never be fully fluent in another culture, but we can be curious, responsive, and willing to learn. And this aligns out directly with ethical responsibilities under NASW Code 105 and ACA Code A2C. I'm not sure how it's actually pronounced, A.2.C. Both call for cultural awareness and sensitivity. Cultural humility operationalizes those ethics through intentional ongoing self-evaluation. So, next framework, excuse me, is the multidimensional model of cultural competence. And I forgot who the author of this is. Hold on. Gerald Wing Sue. Okay, it provides framework for how we grow as culturally responsive clinicians. It emphasizes the three dimensions of awareness, which is understanding our own cultural assumptions, biases, and privilege. Knowledge, which is actively learning about diverse cultural values, experiences, and histories. And then skills, applying culturally responsive strategies and assessment. Why is my thing doing this? Okay. Skills, applying culturally responsive strategies and assessment, intervention, and communication. So Sue also highlights that competence operates on multiple levels, which is individual, professional, organizational, and societal. So when we think about the Goldilocks syndrome, this model helps us see where our blind spots might fall. Are we practicing from awareness? Are we practicing from knowledge? Or are we practicing from skill? Or are we centering our own comfort versus our client's lived experience? So again, NASW Code of Ethics and ACA Code of Ethics reinforce these dimensions as part of competent ethical practice. And the third theoretical framework is the multicultural orientation. And this orientation reminds us that it's something we do. It's not something that we do to clients. It's something we co-create with them. Owen and colleagues emphasize three therapist qualities: cultural humility, cultural comfort, and cultural opportunity. So cultural humility, awareness of our limitations and openness to client feedback. Cultural comfort, the ability to discuss cultural identity and difference without avoidance. And then we have cultural opportunity, which is recognizing and using moments in therapy to explore culture meaningfully. So from an ethical perspective, this aligns with our mandate to respect the dignity and worth of people and to avoid imposing personal values on those individuals. So again, multicultural orientation helps us translate those ethics into relational practice. So what is cultural humility? Cultural humility is, again, an ongoing process of self-reflection and personal critique. It requires us as helping professionals to continuously evaluate our own biases, acknowledge the limitations of our cultural understanding, and commit to lifelong learning. Unlike cultural competence, which suggests mastery of knowledge of different cultures, cultural humility emphasizes a humble and respectful attitude toward understanding others' cultural experiences. Excuse me. So why is cultural humility important? As helping professionals, cultural humility is crucial in building trust and rapport with clients from diverse backgrounds. Missteps in understanding cultural nuances can lead to ineffective support, miscommunication, or even harm. So by addressing the Goldilocks syndrome, we aim to refine our approach, ensuring that we neither overestimate our cultural knowledge nor shy away from engaging in meaningful conversations about culture. In order to understand the Goldilocks syndrome, we have to go back to the fairy tale of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. If you can't hear the story, please let me know.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears. retold and illustrated by Valerie Gorbachev. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears who lived together in a little cottage in the woods. There was a great big father bear, a middle-sized mother bear, and a wee small baby bear. One morning, the 3 bears decided to go for a walk in the woods while the breakfast porridge cooled. While they were gone, a little girl named Goldilocks came past their cottage. She peeked in the window, and when she saw that no one was home, she went inside. There on the table sat the 3 bowls of porridge. The porridge smelled so delicious that Goldilocks just had to have some. First, she tried the porridge in the great big father bear's great big bowl, but it was too hot. Next, she tried the porridge in the middle-sized mother bear's middle-sized bowl, but it was too cold. Then she tried the porridge in the wee small baby bear's wee small bowl, and it was just right, so she ate it all up. When she had finished the porridge, Goldilocks wandered into the sitting room, where she found the 3 bears' chairs. First, she tried the great big father bear's great big chair, but it was too hard. Next, she tried the middle-sized mother bear's middle-sized chair, but it was too soft. Then she tried the wee small baby bear's wee small chair, and it was just right, so Goldilocks sat down in the chair and broke it to bits. Then Goldilocks went upstairs, where she found the 3 bears' beds. First, she tried the great big father bear's great big bed, but it was too hard. Next, she tried the middle-sized mother bear's middle-sized bed, but it was too soft. Then she tried the wee small baby bear's wee small bed, and it was just right, so Goldilocks lay down and fell fast asleep. No sooner had Goldilocks fallen asleep than the 3 bears returned home. Their walk had made them very hungry, so they hurried right into the kitchen. Goldilocks had left the spoon in the great big father bear's porridge. "Someone has been eating my porridge," said the great big father bear in his great big voice. The middle-sized mother bear saw that the spoon had been left in her porridge bowl too. "Someone has been eating my porridge," said the middle-sized mother bear in her middle-sized voice. Then the wee small baby bear looked at his bowl of porridge. "Someone has been eating my porridge," cried the wee small baby bear in his wee small voice. "And they've eaten it all up." The 3 bears hurried into the sitting room. Goldilocks had knocked the pillow off the great big father bear's chair. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," said the great big father bear in his great big voice. The pillow on the middle-sized mother bear's chair had been moved too. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," said the middle-sized mother bear in her middle-sized voice. Then the wee small baby bear looked at his chair. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," cried the wee small baby bear in his wee small voice, "and they've broken it to bits." Then the 3 bears went upstairs. Goldilocks had messed up the covers on the great big father bear's bed. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," said the great big father bear in his great big voice. The covers on the middle-sized mother bear's bed had been messed up too. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," said the middle-sized mother bear in her middle-sized voice. Then the wee small baby bear looked at his bed. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," cried the wee small baby bear in his wee small voice. "And here she is." Goldilocks woke with the start. She leapt out of bed, jumped through the window, clambered down the roof, and ran away just as fast as she could go. What happened to Goldilocks afterwards? No one knows. The 3 bears never saw her again, and they lived happily ever after in their cottage in the woods.
Okay, so this is the story of Goldilocks and the three bears that we all know. So as she's moving through the bear's home, evaluating each item solely on what feels just right for her, she's not concerned with ownership, context, or the needs of others. She's just trying to take resources. So in practice, helping professionals can unintentionally behave like Goldilocks when we measure clients' behaviors, values, or cultural expressions against our own lens of normal or acceptable. All right, so I'm going to step back to the ethical standards alignment. So for Goldilocks, what did the book talk about? Competence and accountability. So again, with ACA, that's C.2.A, counselors practice only within their competence and seek additional education when necessary. NBCC, it's section 1, counselors shall perform only those professional services for which they are qualified by training, education, and supervised experience, which includes culture. Dignity and worth of the person, again, for ACA, counselors' primary responsibility is to respect the dignity and promote the welfare of clients. NBCC, counselors shall not engage in unlawful discrimination. And again, when you're looking at cultural humility, it may not feel like you're discriminating because you're just thinking about what is quote unquote normal or acceptable in the culture that you're working in. And that could just be the culture of the agency, or it can just be based on your own training. Okay, so understanding colonialism. Colonialism is a political and economic system in which a powerful country establishes control over a less powerful territory, often exploiting it economically, culturally, and politically. The colonizing nation asserts dominance, typically for resource extraction, trade advantages, and strategic power, leading to profound and lasting impacts on the colonized societies. So key aspects of colonialism include economic exploitation, where colonizers often exploited natural resources, labor, and markets for the colonized regions. Wealth and raw materials were extracted and sent back to the colonizing country, fueling their industrial and economic growth while impoverishing the local population. We have cultural suppression and assimilation. Indigenous cultures, languages, and traditions were often suppressed or replaced with those of the colonizers. Education, religion, and governance systems were typically reshaped to reflect the colonizers' values, leading to a loss of cultural identity and heritage. Then we have political control and segregation. Colonies were governed by the colonizing power, often without representation or consideration for the local population's interests. Systems of racial and social hierarchy were frequently established, creating long-term inequality and social divisions. And then we have resistance and independence movements. So over time, many colonized societies resisted colonial rule through uprisings, political movements, and cultural preservation. The mid-20th century saw significant decolonization, with many countries gaining independence through negotiation, struggle, and revolution. Additional impacts of colonialism. Post-colonial economies were dependent on a few industries or commodities with limited infrastructure for sustainable development. The legacy of resource extraction left many former colonies impoverished and reliant on international aid or unfavorable trade relationships. Colonialism disrupted indigenous cultures, leading to a loss of traditional knowledge, languages, and customs, as we previously said, and efforts to reclaim and preserve cultural identity continue in many post-colonial societies. With political instability, we have the arbitrary borders drawn by colonial powers, which often ignored ethnic, cultural, or historical realities, leading to conflicts and political instability. And then post-colonial states frequently struggle with governance, corruption, and authoritarianism, stemming from the lack of democratic traditions and institutions under the colonial rule. And then we have social and psychological effects. Colonialism instilled a sense of inferiority and dependency on the colonized populations, perpetuating race and social hierarchies. And the trauma of colonial violence, exploitation, and marginalizations has had lasting psychological effects on individuals and communities. And I've just got a couple of examples. First example is Africa. The Berlin Conference divided Africa among European powers, leading to extensive exploitation and conflict. The impact of colonial rule is evident in the economic challenges, ethnic conflicts, and governance issues faced by African nations today. Example 2 is India. British colonial rule restructured India's economy, prioritizing British economic interests, which contributed to widespread poverty and famine. The cultural and social fabric of India was deeply influenced, with lasting impact on caste systems, education, and legal framework. And then example 3, we have Latin America. Spanish and Portuguese colonization led to the extraction of vast wealth through mining and agriculture, benefiting the colonizers at the expense of local populations. The indigenous populations were decimated, and their cultures were marginalized or assimilated into the dominant European culture. So, Goldilocks bridge to colonialism. The Goldilocks syndrome becomes even clearer when we connect it to colonialism. Colonial powers entered new lands, judged cultural practices against their own standards, and imposed what they believed was just right. That mindset erased languages, traditions, and entire ways of knowing and thinking. So in our professional practice, we must resist repeating this pattern by imposing dominant cultural norms or assuming our perspective is the right perspective. So instead, cultural humility asks us to understand history, honor differences, and co-create meaning with the people and communities we serve. Again, I'm just going to bring it back to the ethics because, again, we want to continuously make sure we're abiding by our code of ethics. Cultural awareness and social diversity. In ACA, we have developmental and cultural sensitivity. Counselors communicate in developmentally and culturally appropriate ways. Personal values. Counselors practice within their boundaries of competence and seek multicultural training when needed. NBCC. Counselors shall demonstrate multicultural counseling competencies in practice. And then we have awareness of personal values and bias. ACA. Counselors are aware of their own values and avoid imposing those on clients. NBCC. Counselors shall take proactive measures to avoid harming their clients and avoid imposing personal values on those who receive their professional services. All right, so let's take a quick look at contemporary reflections on colonialism. We've just reviewed how the Code of Ethics calls us to recognize power, respect client dignity, and challenge injustice. But ethics aren't just theoretical. They are a guide on how we engage with systems and communities today. Colonialism didn't end in the history books. Its patterns continue to shape policies, institutions, and professional practices. So let's take a closer look at how colonial thinking shows up in contemporary contexts. So post-colonial theory examines the lingering effects of colonialism on former colonies, including cultural identity, economic dependency, and political instability. Decolonization involves reclaiming cultural, political, and economic autonomy from the legacies of colonial rule. Movements in education, arts, and governance seek to address historical injustices, and promote indigenous knowledge and practices. Understanding colonialism and its enduring impact is crucial for addressing historical injustice, fostering global equity and cultural understanding. The legacies of colonialism continue to shape contemporary social, political, and economic structures, making it an essential topic for study and reflection. So, decentralizing the colonized perspective. This involves shifting away from viewing and interpreting social, cultural, and historical narratives through the dominant, often colonial lens. Instead, it focuses on amplifying the voices, experiences, and wisdom of marginalized and colonized communities. This process challenges traditional power dynamics and promotes equity, inclusivity, and shared decision-making. So it's pretty much saying person-centered. So key concepts: shifting focus from dominant cultural and perspective. In many professional and social contexts, the dominant cultural narrative shapes policies, practices, and interactions, and those are usually rooted in colonial histories. This perspective can marginalize or silence the experiences of the non-dominant groups. Decentralizing involves intentionally recognizing and addressing the imbalance by elevating the voices of the communities being served. So for helping professions, this means acknowledging your own cultural biases and prioritizing the lived experiences and cultural knowledge of the clients we serve and work with. Honoring marginalized voices. Marginalized communities often possess rich, diverse cultural wisdom that has been overlooked or devalued in dominant narratives. Decentralizing requires creating spaces for those voices to be heard, respected, and integrated into the decision-making process. This involves listening deeply, valuing Indigenous knowledge systems, and resisting the urge to impose external solutions that may not align with the community's values or needs. Recognizing power dynamics. Power imbalances are inherent in many professional-client relationships, especially in contexts influenced by colonial histories. Helping professionals often hold institutional power that can perpetuate these imbalances. Decentralizing the colonizer's perspective involves critically examining these power dynamics, seeking to share power, and fostering collaborative, equitable relationships. Again, person-centered. So with that, we have equitable shared decision-making. True decentralization requires moving towards a model of shared decision-making where the community's voices are not just heard, but actively shape outcomes. This contrasts with top-down approaches where decisions are made without meaningful input from those most affected. So in the helping professions, this means co-creating interventions, policies, and programs with the clients or communities, ensuring that their cultural contexts, preferences, and needs drive the processes. Practical steps for decentralizing. So social workers, professional counselors, marriage and family therapists, psychologists, we must continuously engage in self-reflection to identify and challenge our own biases, ensuring that our practices are culturally informed and respectful. So, advocacy and empowerment. By decentralizing those perspectives, we support clients in reclaiming their narratives and advocating for systemic change. Community engagement. Effective decentralization involves building genuine partnerships with communities, recognizing them as experts in their own lives, and collaborating to create solutions that reflect their own unique cultural context. So decentralizing the colonizer's perspective is a critical step towards more equitable, inclusive, and culturally responsive practices. By shifting the focus to marginalized voices, recognizing power imbalances, and fostering shared decision-making, helping professionals can help create more just and empowering outcomes. Decentralizing refers to shifting the focus away from the helping professional's perspective as the default or dominant viewpoint, and centering the client's experiences, values, and cultural contexts. This approach aligns with the principles of cultural humility and enhances the effectiveness of service delivery. Again, practical steps for decentralization. We've talked about self-awareness. We've talked about client-centered practice. We've talked about collaborative learning. We've talked about power sharing and shared decision-making. So let's imagine flipping the story. What if we centered Baby Bear instead of Goldilocks? In this version, the disruption isn't about Goldilocks' comfort. It's about the harm caused to Baby Bear and her family when their space, their voice, and their perspectives are ignored. This inversion represents clients and communities whose cultural ways of being are dismissed or undervalued in dominant systems. So now let's listen to the three bears in Goldilocks. There once was a beautiful little bear called Baby Bear. One day, Baby Bear went for a walk in the wild woods with her parents, Mama Bear and Papa Bear. After a long stroll, the family looked forward to returning to their cozy home where 3 bowls of sweet and delicious porridge awaited. Baby Bear skipped happily as she thought about eating porridge with her parents in their 3 comfortable chairs before relaxing and napping in their 3 new made-to-fit beds. As the 3 bears neared their home, Baby Bear suddenly froze. She stopped hopping around and turned to look back at her parents, whose pace had also slowed down upon noticing that their kitchen windows were wide open. "That's strange," Baby Bear said. "Yes, it's very strange," Mama Bear replied. "I specifically remember leaving the windows only an inch open to air out the house." As they entered their home, Baby Bear and her parents found that their porridge was eaten, their comfortable chairs were broken, and then in their bedroom, they found a little girl sleeping in Baby Bear's made-to-fit bed. Who was she? Was it she who had eaten their food and broken their furniture? And why? She was a little girl called Goldilocks, who lived at the other side of the town and had been sent on an errand by her mother, passed by the bear's house, and looked in through the window. Then, seeing how cozy and resourceful it looked, she lifted the window latch and snuck in. Baby Bear noticed that her bed was broken and burst into tears. Her sobbing woke the girl up. Visibly frightened by seeing the 3 bears, Goldilocks screamed, "What are you doing here?" Sooner than Baby Bear could reply that she, Goldilocks, was the intruder rather than the other way around, Goldilocks got out of the bed, put her shoes on, and pushed Baby Bear to the side before running away in panic. Stunned at what had taken place, the 3 bears were left with a multitude of questions. Had they been naive to leave their home unprotected? If so, why had they been naive? Was this all partly their fault? And would Goldilocks return to do more damage? They would never see the little girl again, but the specter of her actions would unsettle them for years to come. So, in the story of the 3 bears and Goldilocks, Baby Bear becomes the central character. With that, we experience a shift in the perspective that offers profound insights into the concept of decentralizing, the colonizer, and cultural narratives. This shift mirrors the process of decentering the dominant colonial perspectives in the quest for cultural humility. Traditionally, colonial narratives place the colonizer at the center, portraying them as bringers of civilization, knowledge, and order. The experiences and voices of the colonized were often marginalized. But by placing Baby Bear, representing a marginalized or indigenous perspective, at the center of the story, we challenge the traditional power dynamics and allow for a more empathetic understanding of the impact of external intrusion, represented by Goldilocks. This shift highlights the importance of seeing the world through the eyes of those who have historically been pushed to the margins. By shifting our focus to marginalized perspectives, we can foster greater empathy, challenge dominant narratives, and engage in more equitable and respectful interactions. In the helping professions, this approach is essential for providing culturally responsive and effective support to diverse populations. So again, I would like to bring us back to our code of ethics. Again, with ACA, we have social and cultural diversity section. Councils are expected to advocate for equitable access and challenge systems that oppress individuals or groups. NBCC core value. Access and equity are essential to the mental well-being of their clients while supporting the overall physical health of each client. And then we have the importance of human relationships. ACA, councils promote client welfare and build culturally responsive relationships. NBCC core value. With respect to all clients and work, counselors seek to be mindful of their humanity as they fulfill their counseling duties. So, moving forward and embracing cultural humility in practice. Cultural humility is a foundational approach that emphasizes lifelong learning, self-reflection, and the equitable engagement of diverse clients. And I know I've said this several times before, but I just want that to be repeated and remembered. So unlike cultural competence, which focuses on acquiring knowledge about specific cultures, cultural humility prioritizes an ongoing process of self-reflection, recognizing power imbalances, and fostering respectful, mutually beneficial relationships. So, benefits of continuous self-reflection. Enhanced client relationships. Self-reflection helps build trust and rapport by showing clients that their cultural experiences are respected and valued. Improved outcomes. Clients are more likely to engage in and benefit from services when they feel understood and supported. And then professional growth. Continuous self-reflection contributes to personal and professional development, enabling helping professions to provide more effective ethical care. So, some quick strategies for implementing self-reflection. Journaling. Regular journaling about client interaction can help identify patterns in their thoughts and behaviors, fostering deeper self-awareness. Supervision and peer support. Engaging in regular supervision or peer consultation provides a safe space for discussing biases and developing strategies to address them. And then ongoing education. Again, participating in cultural humility trainings, reading relevant literature, and attending workshops can deepen understanding and promote reflective practice. So, one more set of ethical standards. I think this is the last set. Cultural awareness and lifelong learning, ACA. Counselors communicate in developmentally and culturally appropriate ways. ACA, counselors practice within their boundaries of competence and seek multicultural training when needed. Awareness of personal values and biases. ACA, counselors are aware of their own values and avoid imposing these on clients. And so I want to bring this all together. Now that we've explored the Goldilocks mindset, we talked about colonialism, and we've repeatedly discussed our ethical responsibilities. Let's bring all these ideas into a real world scenario. So I'm going to present a brief case study that highlights power imbalances in a helping relationship. And this is an opportunity for us to reflect together to notice where bias, assumptions, or systemic inequities might show up, and to think about how cultural humility can guide ethical decision making. And I encourage you to actively participate, share your thoughts, ask questions, consider how you might respond in your own practice. And there's no right or wrong answers. The goal is dialogue and reflection. So we have Tom. Tom is an addiction therapist at a community health center. Recently, he's noticed increased client dropout rates, especially among clients from diverse cultural backgrounds. His supervisor has raised concerns about his communication style and the lack of client input in treatment planning. Supervisor has sent Tom an email. Hi, Tom. Following our recent supervision, I'm asking you to complete the attached reflective worksheet on cultural humility. Please review your recent client cases, especially those involving clients from different cultural backgrounds, and reflect on how your approach may have impacted the therapeutic alliance. We will debrief your reflections at next week's supervision. Thanks for your openness to growth. Next, we have an exit survey from Louis G., although they would usually be confidential. So Louis G. says in his exit survey, I didn't feel listened to. Tom had a plan for me before really hearing what I wanted. I felt judged because I didn't follow every step exactly. And it seemed like my family situation wasn't important to him. And we have an excerpt from Louis G.'s treatment plan. The primary goal, which was written by the therapist. And he has complete 12 weeks of sobriety-focused CBT program, attend AA meetings twice per week, weekly check-ins on program milestones. And then in his notes, there's no documented client goals related to family concerns, immigration, stress, or cultural identity. And then the therapist notes indicate client non-compliance when Louis misses meetings. And then we have agenda item 3 in a staff meeting, cultural responsive training. Review findings from client satisfaction surveys, one of which we just saw. Discuss action steps to increase cultural humility across departments, and plan for mandatory workshops on inclusive practices. So they want to address this, and they're just trying to find the ways to do so. So, discussion questions. How is Tom's lack of cultural humility impacting his clients? Where are the missed opportunities for building trust and collaboration? What systemic factors, such as policies or trainings, also contribute to the issue? And how could Tom begin repairing relationships and improving practice? And you can either unmute or type into the chat. Just want to hear your thoughts.
I would say my mind's going like addiction is already a huge field where there's a lot of stigma, and then you bring in the diverse cultural backgrounds. And I think just that lack of cultural humility is the therapist is kind of taking on that expert role rather than kind of remaining curious, being open, asking questions, kind of in the case study too of like, hey, there's these other factors like immigration stress. There's a lot of different things that we could explore, but also we need to give our clients space to feel comfortable and safe in that therapeutic relationship. And it seems like Tom did not create that safe space.
I see all of that. And does anyone else have any thoughts that they'd like to share before I say anything? Okay, so with my thoughts on Tom, one, Tom did not allow Louis G to have a person-centered treatment plan. And with the immigration status and his family, I just made up a random scenario. So I don't remember if his family is here or if they are still in another country. We don't know if they can be supportive of his current treatment, or if the status of the immigration can be contributing to some of his factors. So there's a lot that can be discussed there. And as far as him not taking into the culture, Louis G may not want to do AA. He might have something else that he prefers to utilize from his own culture. He may feel more religious, and he may think that church would be more helpful for him than AA. Just thinking and taking all that into consideration, letting him create his own treatment plan, his own goals, his own interventions that he is capable and willing to follow. Because again, just because Tom creates it does not mean that that's what Louis wants or is able to do. There may be some limitations for Louis. There could be transportation limitations. We don't know. So just wanted to bring that back to some real world situations to just show how something like that can affect everything. Again, education and lifelong learning, continuous self-reflection, reflective practice, staying updated, engagement with communities. So engage with, I'm just going to say that Louis is Guatemalan. There may be a Guatemalan community in the area that Tom could reach out to get some assistance and get some ideas on other interventions that could assist Louis. Examples of learning activities. We have professional development, academic engagement, community involvement, and reflective journaling. Again, the benefits of lifelong learning: enhanced client relationships, improved service delivery, and increased advocacy. So, embracing cultural humility in practice. What does that look like? Incorporating cultural humility into practice. You can incorporate it into assessments, and that involves recognizing the uniqueness of each client's cultural identity and experiences. Approach assessments with an open mind, avoiding assumptions based on stereotypes or generalizations. And then incorporating cultural humility into intervention. Intervention strategies should be tailored to align with the client's cultural values and beliefs. Again, Tom did not do that. This involves collaborating with clients to develop culturally appropriate, relevant interventions. And that can be the difference between an individual that we're working with being successful in their treatment or not being successful. Incorporating cultural humility into advocacy. Cultural humility extends to advocacy by recognizing and addressing systemic inequalities and promoting social justice. So helping professionals must advocate for policies and practices that are inclusive and equitable for all cultural groups. And then collaboration and collective learning. So engaging in collaborative work with colleagues from diverse backgrounds that can enrich your practice by exposing you to different perspectives and approaches. This collaboration fosters mutual learning and helps dismantle biases. And then participating in collective learning experiences such as workshops, seminars, and peer discussions helps to continuously expand knowledge and understanding. And then we've talked about what it means to move toward cultural humility in practice. We're just staying curious, sharing power, and working collaboratively instead of assuming you know what is just right. So we have awareness not being enough. The real question becomes, what do we actually do in the moment when we feel the urge to step in, correct, or decide for someone else? This is where the soul boundary model comes in. It's a simple micro-decision reflection tool that helps us slow down, stay grounded in cultural humility, and choose responses that are intentional rather than automatic. So cultural humility tells us why it matters. The soul boundary model gives us a way to practice it in real time. And SOUL is an acronym for slow down, observe your feelings, observe what's going on around you, understand how everything that you're thinking and seeing is impacting the individual that you're working with and how it impacts you as well. Then lead with intention. So, quick soul boundary model in action. Where could you pause instead of deciding? Whose voices are centered and whose are missing? What would choosing differently look like tomorrow? There's no perfect answers here. The value comes from noticing patterns, questioning assumptions, and committing to more humble, equitable approach. And so I know that Natalie had a few more things she wanted to discuss. I just want to leave you with one Goldilocks question. Where am I still trying to be just right instead of being accountable? There's no sharing required. This is just about intention. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
That last question was like a powerful question. I've done a couple of other trainings with cultural humility, and I feel like the one reflection I always get from them is just like the ongoing process of reflection. It's not like you have to be perfect, you have to know everything. Mm-hmm. It is so simple of just asking questions and being present with others. I feel like that's like the biggest thing that I get from these trainings is to give myself that reminder to like slow down and not go into fix it.
Again, a soul boundary model, please feel free to use it. Slow down, observe, understand, lead with intention.
Yeah.
And then I don't have it in here. I have it in another version of my training. If there is a rupture in the relationship, do not just try to sweep it under the rug. Name it, repair it. And that helps, again, to rebuild the trust and the rapport so that you all can move forward in working together towards that common goal.
Well, thank you so much, Whitney. This was a great training. And even in such like a short hour, I feel like I learned a lot and had a lot of reflections that I'm going to take into my practice. As a reminder for everybody, when the training concludes and you leave the call, you will be able to click on that CE quiz and post survey. You will need to pass the quiz before you can get that certificate. While you need a passing score, you can retake the quiz if needed. If you need a copy of your certificate later, you can always access it through your profile at any time. Just as that reminder too, Whitney provides continuing education and clinical consultation at cunaconsultingllc.com. Be sure to check out all of our other trainings. We have a lot of good upcoming trainings coming up. So if you're able to join those, we would love to have you. An evaluation will also be emailed to you. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to complete it. And the evaluation will also ask if you want to be added to the mailing list or be a guest speaker in the future. So just be sure to include your email address if that is something you're interested. Thank you again, Witni, for providing us with such valuable information and for this training. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And don't forget that you need a training.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart & Solutions is proud to provide CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.